Hello, everyone. This is Jody Gale from Utah State University Extension on behalf of the National County Agents Association. I serve as the chairman of the Natural Resource Committee. Would like to welcome all of you who are in live attendance at the NACAA 365 webinar today. Meeting, I guess I should say, being corrected by Scott. So Scott's working in the background to help with technology. And Scott, as always, we very much appreciate your expertise and making things happen. Today, the Natural Resource Committee is very pleased to sponsor this webinar. Today, we have with us Brenda Jackson. She's a county extension coordinator for Ag and Natural Resources with the University of Georgia. Located in Murray County. She's been a county agent in the Northwest region since 2007. She works with farmers, homeowners, the green industry professionals, and she also works with youth that have agriculture interests such as livestock, poultry, forestry, and water conservation. Brenda has a bachelor's degree, a Bachelor of Science in Animal Science from Berry College, and a Master of Science in Animal Science from the University of Georgia. Also today with us, helping with the presentation is Brenda Griffin. She's also with the University of Georgia. In Community and School Garden Coordinator is her title. She works with extension agents across Georgia, helping create impactful gardens. She's also a Pollinator Health Associate and a Georgia Certified Beekeeper with emphasis on ecosystems of the garden and teaching workshops on beneficial entomology. Integrated pest management is an important part of her work. Becky is the coordinator of the Great Southeast Pollinator Census program, which is one of her passions. And they're going to explain to us today the program. And with that, we'll turn the time over to the two of them. The webinar is scheduled to last approximately an hour. And we would like to remind them towards the end, we would like to block out a little time for some question and answers. I'll serve as a moderator and we'll watch the chat feature as questions come in. So Brenda and Becky, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you. For those of you that are not familiar with UGA, we have a Center for Urban Agriculture at our Griffin campus, and their primary focus is obviously agriculture, or urban ag specifically. And they offer these mini grants for ag agents to apply for and to do projects in areas, environmental issues, urban forestry, landscape and nursery, that type of thing. So back in 2020, I applied for a mini grant to put together a pollinator garden here at what at that time was our new office. We had just moved in January of 2020, and this grant offer came out, I guess it was in February, March, something like that. Our local school system had actually remodeled a house on our high school property into an office for us. And as you can see, on the screen here, this is a picture of the back of the house and then a Google Earth view. We have a lot of space that we could do something with. So I applied for this grant to put in a pollinator garden. I had been talking to one of our university specialist, Dr. Bodhi Panisi, about partnering and testing some pollinator plants that were native to Georgia, but some specific varieties that had not been tested in the North Georgia area. So I got approved for the grant, and the check literally came in the mail the day before they shut us down for COVID. So all I had time to do was to put the check in the bank. By the time UGA was back in our offices, it was June, and June, if you're not familiar with June in Georgia, that is not necessarily an optimal time to plant anything. So I spent the summer, well, if I can get my slides to advance. I spent the summer just getting everything ready. I did not have a tractor on hand. The school system, our schools, we don't, they don't have a tractor or anything like that. So what you see in the top left is pretty much the dump truck load of mulch that we ended up spreading by hand with just shovels and rakes and wheelbarrows. After a couple of rounds of Roundup to kill as much of the Bermuda grass as possible. And then pretty much this is where the garden sat for until fall, until we could actually plant. And then in fall of 2020, I was able to get some 4-Hers to come out with me, and we started planting 5 replicated beds of specific plant varieties in a checkerboard pattern in the garden. And all of the plants, actually the plants didn't cost me anything. They came from our university greenhouses. We planted black-eyed Susan, purple coneflower, mountain mint, nodding onion, Gendai aster, which is one, if you're not familiar with Gendai aster, it gets about 6 feet tall. It's probably the tallest flower in my garden. Glossolabilia, Coreopsis, columbine, and beard tongue. And it was me and these 3 4-Hers that planted the entire garden that you see here. And Becky was actually partially my incentive. Her pollinator census program, I wanted to, provide an educational garden where people who couldn't garden at home could come participate in the pollinator census here at my office. So basically that's what you're seeing here is a couple of volunteers coming in, and this is the first spring in 2021 where they're monitoring and doing their pollinator monitoring, and literally they pick a plant, they count the number of pollinators that visit, and the one that you see in the yellow circle had a garden at home, but he was in the process of, as we were going through this, he actually expanded his garden at home, and he actually now has his own bees, and also produces honey at home. Based on the pollinator counts in my garden, specifically here at the office, coneflower appeared to be the favorite, followed by mountain mint and then black-eyed Susan. Later that same year, another extension agent, Jessica Warren, down in Chatham County, and Martin Wonderly, one of our water specialists, started this a Georgia Green Landscape Stewards workshop series. And I used my pollinator garden as basically as an outdoor classroom as when I did that workshop series in my office. 2 of the attendees in that series have completed the entire certification process and got the sign that you see up there in the top right, that their garden at home is a Georgia certified green landscape. That program specifically is intended to provide resources regarding protecting natural resources, increasing biodiversity in home landscapes, and providing habitat for wildlife and pollinators. So a couple of the volunteers that you see here doing the pollen count are actually nurses at our local hospital, and they even took what they learned in that green landscape class and have built a small garden outside the emergency room entrance at our hospital, just to give them and patients and patient families a place to just to get out and rest the brain and de-stress a little bit as they're at work. So these are some of our pollen visitors. And the garden that you see in the center, and you can literally walk past the garden and hear it hum and just watch the clouds of pollinators rise up and then lower back down as you walk past. This garden has been a continual learning process for me, and as an opportunity for personal growth, because what I'm learning in my pollinator garden here at the office, then I take home and I do in my garden at home. And something that I never knew was that certain parasitic wasps actually will pollinate flowers as well. We have some blue-winged wasps that absolutely love the mountain mint, and there will be multiples, per plant, per flower cluster, honestly. And this is one that I never even considered. I thought, hey, they parasitize grubs. They're not going to do anything else. But they actually, just about everything, I think, enjoys the mountain mint. One of my other goals with this garden, after learning about the pollinator census and monarch migration and that type of thing, was to start encouraging other pollinators to visit. And this year, this is the first year I actually have confirmed populations of monarch butterflies visiting and laying eggs in the pollinator garden here at the extension office. Who thought that we would actually be that excited over caterpillars in the garden? But I was very excited to see that I am able to provide a waypoint for caterpillars as they're migrating north and south. In 2022, I partnered with the Young Professionals Organization for our local Chamber of Commerce and expanded the garden from the original location in the back of the house to the area in the front of the house. This was the first time I've ever actually had an opportunity to watch somebody else plant flowers for me. They sent plenty of volunteers and they literally did all of the work, and all I had to do was point. And that was unusual for me. I have a hard time letting other people do the work for me. And then in 2023, I applied with the State Botanical Garden of Georgia to be a part of the Connect to Protect program, which is another opportunity to educate the public on native plant materials, pollinators, and their significance. So throughout 2022 and 23, I held educational classes and even had individual clients visit and want to walk through the garden and point and identify and learn how to grow them at home and that type of thing. So that just, gave me an opportunity to highlight, the work that UGA does in general, and what we're doing here locally with our local program. And then also in 2023, another partnership with Dr. Bodhi Panisi was an opportunity to grow aronia berry in a landscape type environment. They had been learning more about this particular, it's a large shrub, native to eastern and central of the United States. It is native to Georgia, but apparently that one of the things that they were learning is that while it would grow throughout Georgia, it only blooms and produces berries in North Georgia. So, and they were looking at this particular plant not only as a potential fruit cash crop, but also as an opportunity as an ornamental in the landscape. So I've got about 7 of those that are growing throughout the landscape here at my office as well. So in 2024, these didn't act, they were planted in the fall of 23, and in 2024, they did not flower, but I'm hoping to see these flower pretty soon. And one of the challenges that I run into, in my community is, and this is why I like being able to have, citizen scientists, come to the office, or even just, clients in general come to the office, is because this is an opportunity that they can see you know, the research that the University of Georgia is doing, not just on location in, you know, the Athens campus or the Tifton campus or something like that, but it's also available for them to visit out in our communities. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Becky so she can tell you more about the pollinator census.
Great. Thank you, Brenda. All right, can everybody see what they're supposed to see?
Looks good, Becky.
Thank you. So yes, I'm Becky Griffin with the University of Georgia. You've already heard my bio, so I'm just going to get right into the Great Southeast Pollinator Census. I had this idea in 2019, or before 2019, as I was driving around the state looking at gardens, and I saw a lot of this. I saw a lot of green. I haven't seen a lot of flowers, and I would meet with gardeners who knew a lot about, let's say, soil health and maybe what plant to plant when and what vegetables grow best in that ecosystem. But they didn't know a lot about entomology. I met a lot of people who, it's a bad bug. If it's a bug, we're going to spray it. And as you can see, there's not a lot of flowering plants here. These gardeners were having trouble with pest insects, and they were having lower yields than they wanted to have. So that made me think about what can we do about that. And I had a lot of time, because I have a statewide position driving around Georgia, ways to think about how we could address that problem. And that is how the census was born. We have 3 goals with the pollinator census. The first is to create sustainable pollinator habitat. We have a lot of people moving in our state from other areas, and we want to make sure when they're adding pollinator habitat, they're not adding things that need sprays. We don't want to add powdery mildew. We don't want to attract a lot of pest insects. So sustainability is the key word there. Our second goal is the most important to me, which is to increase the entomological literacy of our citizens. As I told one educator, I would love it if people went from saying, ooh, it's a bug, to look at the tarsal claw on that bee. You know, a little more positivity about all the insects in the garden. And then, of course, to generate useful data about our populations. When I started working toward this project, I met with statisticians and researchers and educators all across not just Georgia, but the United States. And keep in mind, as I go and tell you a little bit more about this project, the researchers who use the data generated from the project realize this is a community science initiative. They understand that it's not a lot of PhDs out there doing species level work. And that makes me relax a little bit and takes a little bit of the pressure off of new participants. So basically what happens is that people will go out to their garden and they'll count, and they're going to see the insects that land on a pollinator plant of their choice, and they're going to put those insects into one of 8 categories. Now, this was the sticking point, developing the counting criteria. We wanted something that was difficult enough that people had to learn a little entomology. How do you tell a carpenter bee from a bumblebee? What exactly is a wasp? You know, that type of thing, so that we are educating them, but we didn't want it to be intimidating. We did not want to make it so that people are scared to actually do counting. So for 2 years, 2017 and 18, we ran pilot projects to test out this counting criteria and tweak it just a little bit. And this is how it stands at this point. People will go out and find a favorite pollinator plant, and that is really up to them. Something that catches their interest, that they see a lot of insect activity. And in one of 2 days, a Friday and a Saturday in August, they will go out to that plant. In Georgia's hot in August, so I always recommend some sweet tea, and they will do their counts. And after their counts are finished, they upload their counts to a website. Some interesting ways that we use the census for education is we ask people to count flies. Well, a lot of people are very confused by that. Why flies? And just as Brenda said, a lot of learning goes on. Well, these are the type of flies, these seraphid flies, that we see in pollinator gardens. And we have found after starting the census, some more research has said that they are second most important pollinator group behind bees. Who knew that? But luckily, we were already looking for flies, and we are one of, if not the only census in the United States actually looking at flies. And the larvae of these flies feed on garden pests. So the census is actually a gateway into teaching people about beneficial insects that visit their garden. And it is an easy task to teach people to tell if it's a fly or a bee. It's very simple using these general techniques here, these general descriptions. And it's amazing, and you as extension personnel already know this, when people learn a little bit, they become empowered. So once I teach people how to tell the difference between a bee and a fly in their garden, they want to go out and look for flies and bees. So it really kind of snowballs that people become extremely interested in entomology just by participating in the census. Brenda already mentioned wasps. We also have wasps in the census. They're also easy to tell, and they do dine on pollen and nectar depending on their species. But as she mentioned, these insects are looking for grubs. They're going to hang out on the plant, and then they're going to go scouting for Japanese beetle grubs, which are a big problem in Georgia. And they're going to capture those and paralyze them and take them back to their nests. So again, it is not something you would normally consider a pollinator, but they do pollinate, but they're also a beneficial insect for the rest of the garden as well. So that's one way we use the census for educational purposes. After people count, they upload their counts to the website, and they can print out a wonderful certificate, and they get an I counted sticker that they can put on their social media or actually wear around their neighborhood. I've been happy to find these certificates on school walls, kiosks of community gardens, and even many of our state gardens have these displayed as proud participants of the census. As I mentioned, the census is pretty much run by a website. It is me as the coordinator. I don't have any assistants or educators to help me. So everything you need to do the census is actually on the website. If you lived in the middle of nowhere and had no extension agent near you, you could actually learn about the different insect groups through videos, printed materials, lots of pictures. You could download and print a counting sheet to take to your garden and upload your counts there. We started in the state of Georgia, but in 2022, South Carolina joined the initiative, 2023, North Carolina, and this year, Florida joined us as well. So it truly is becoming more of a Southeast pollinator census and not really Georgia-centric. We are very active on our social media. We have a large Southeast Pollinator Census group on Facebook, and we also have an Instagram page. And we, even though we count 2 days a year, the census is truly a year-long initiative. For example, this time of the year, we're in fall. So we are talking to people about how do they clean up their fall garden, or do they leave some of those hollow stems for nesting bees? What notes did they take in their garden this year? Some plants that maybe they saw a neighbor had that they might be interested in incorporating next year, that type of thing. As we get into the winter, when we all start getting those wonderful seed catalogs in our mailbox, we start talking about building on your pollinator gardening or starting a habitat. We talk about which plants do best in which ecosystems, what are best management practices for starting and maintaining a garden. We also talk more about habitat, not just flowers for nutrition, but nesting sites. What are some nesting sites that different bees might need? How do bumblebees overwinter? So we're always continuing the educational process. As we get into the summertime, then we get into insect identification. Through social media, through our monthly newsletter, through in-person events that agents hold, or myself, or even online events. We talk about how to tell a carpenter bee from a bumblebee, or a fly from a small bee, and why that matters and why it's important. And as we get closer to the census, we talk about events. This past year, we had over 100 events throughout the Southeast based on the census. So it's a way for people who maybe want to learn more. How do we find Brenda's extension office? She will post that they're going to have an event. And that way people who maybe haven't heard of extension before go to her office and not only participate in the census, but also participate in learning about other research and other resources that extension has for them. We have an agent only page where I have developed resources such as PowerPoints for them to use in training. We have a template that they can use for announcements in their local newspaper. We have lesson plans for educators. So I've tried to develop it as a grab and go situation. So if you're an extension agent and you want to participate and you have built your garden, you can get on the agent only page, spend about 10 minutes, and you have all the resources you need to have a very successful census event project. I have been happy to partner with our local Office of Communication, and Megan McCoy is a graphic artist who has designed our insect mascots. And that was something I came up with a marketing plan early in the process. So these mascots are seen all over, and they are now easily identifiable as a census mascot. We have these memes and these printouts, and these insects are available for printout for anyone to use. They're available on the website. A lot of people use the insects as stickers. They will take some of the memes and share them on their own social media. We even have a school who is, I think it's a Walton school, and they adopted our wasp, and they are now the Walton Wasps. So we're excited that we're able to make it fun, make the learning about insects fun. On Fridays in the typical year, we have a Fun Fact Friday, and that's where I include a little more entomological information than you need to participate in the census. And I kind of did that just for my own little satisfaction being an entomologist. But what I found are these social media memes are getting picked up. They're being shared. Emory University, which is a university here in Atlanta, actually picks them up and uses them. Teachers use them on their smart boards in their classrooms. So that's just another little fun thing. As the census project has evolved, we're always trying to add to the project. So you built a census garden. What does that really mean besides just I'm able to participate in the census? Well, one happy thing that has been a result of the census is that in August, we generally have what we call a dearth. And if you're a beekeeper or study native bees, you know what that means. There's an area in time where there's just not a lot blooming, and we have maybe a drought. And so even the things that are blooming are not making a lot of nectar. Well, since we have been 6 years in the census and people realize the census is always going to be those last weeks in August, they are actually planting for the census. And what that means is certain areas of Georgia, we have mitigated that dearth, which is just a happy thing that has happened that we did not plan for. So when you have one of these projects, as you all know, as extension people, you don't know what kind of avenues you're going to go down. You don't know what kind of things are going to happen as a response. But that's just something that I'm really happy about. And I hear more and more about positive pollinator plants in August instead of getting mean emails from South Georgia where it's just really hot and they didn't have anything blooming. So who participates in the census, and how does this become really a community thing? Well, first and foremost, I work for extension agents. So however they want to use the program works out great. This is an example in Gwinnett County, which is a county outside of Atlanta. These are 2 master gardeners, and this is a brewery. So what they do, the many breweries around Atlanta plant really nice areas for their patrons to sit outside and enjoy cold beer. Well, the master gardeners helped with that and took advantage, and the brewery was on board. So during the census time, many breweries, not just Slow Pour in Gwinnett, where this picture came from, will have census events where you can come get a beer. Some of the breweries have specials for that weekend and learn about pollinators and do some counting. So that's just one unique thing that, again, I didn't plan for, but people get creative. We have our state parks. Most of them participate, scouting groups. The Daughters of the American Revolution actually use this as their conservation project for the year. This is a picture over here of Marty Kemp, our First Lady. She has a count at the governor's mansion every year. The VFW halls around the state participate. The monks from the Monastery of the Holy Spirit also participate. So it truly has become a community science project, mostly led by our county-wide extension agents. Another really neat part of this project for me is it is a no-cost STEM program. In Georgia, science, technology, engineering, and math programs are really big in the school system. And what I was finding in my job as a school garden coordinator is we had a lot of schools, lower income areas, and if they wanted to become STEM certified or do STEM activities, they just did not have the resources. They didn't have parents who could come in and demonstrate engineering principles. They did not have other programs they could partner with in that county. They did not have a lot of parent volunteers. So on the website, you will find an educators page. And I spend a lot of time training educators in the off season. And we have come up with this no-cost program. So not only do their students count for the census, but they also use the census data for lessons. Let's say they will take their counts and compare them to counts in other counties. All the data is on the website. So all they have to do is go to the website and pull up their county, and they can get all sorts of county data. So there'll be graphing lessons. There'll be counting lessons for some younger kids. The older kids actually will do some statistics work, maybe some frequency tables as well, some critical thinking skills. They're also using their gardens for other topics like English. We have people doing haiku, ode to a butterfly, or doing some pollinator journaling in the garden. So what started as a very small school garden that has some flowers is morphed into a true curriculum program for schools. I haven't finished analyzing the data for 2024, but I do have some numbers. And one of them is 3,092 educators use the program for a STEM program for their schools. So it's out there and being used. Here's some numbers from the first 5 pollinator census events. And we are very excited about the new pollinator gardens. I do have that number for 2024. In 2024, that just happened, 842 new sustainable pollinator gardens went in the Southeast, and 556 of those are in the state of Georgia. So again, developing that sustainable pollinator habitat, not a lot of inputs, and handle some of the drought conditions that we frequently get in our state. And here's a little map. I partnered with a statistician at the university, and she developed some nice math for us, some nice maps. Another side of this that has been very important to the state of Georgia is using census data and using some of her statistics and her knowledge as an economist. We were able to put an economic value on the state of pollination in our state. Now, Georgia is still primarily an agricultural state, and it is our #1 economic driver. And we were able to use census data along with her knowledge to determine that the value of pollination to our state is in excess of $600 million a year. And that was very important to find out for farmers, people wanting grants, people justifying policy on a county or even a state level. So the data is being used in that way. We are also using it, individual farmers in different counties are using it to see what type of pollinators are in their county. So they will have a better idea of what kind of pollinator plants to plant to increase pollination. So it's being used in a lot of really interesting and creative ways. Because we've had several peer-reviewed journal articles published on the census, the criteria is being used as a benchmark. For example, if you are creating a pollinator garden, you may do a pollinator census before you create the new garden using our criteria. And then after the garden goes in, do another, wait 6 months or a year and do another. And that way you can show improvement in your insect populations in your area. So again, very creative ways to use our census to do whatever people need it to do. One of my favorite parts is a lot of work goes into the census, but afterwards, when I'm looking at statements and from people as they've uploaded their counts, these are some of the things that they have said. I like, you can't yell and run around if you want to see some insects. So that was by a 5th grader. One of the questions I do get is, if we have schools that just kind of do a census day, which we do have, how does that work as far as the quality of the data that's uploaded? Well, as I train educators and extension personnel, if you have a pollinator day and you have 1st graders, by all means, send them out to the garden, teach them about insects. That's part of the whole census deal, but they're not going to make accurate counts, so don't upload them. And that's pretty much how it works. We have the older students that have been really trained in counting, and the teacher supervises, and she feels confident that their counts are pretty accurate. Those are uploaded. And the ones where they just got to learn and be in the garden, those are not. So our number of participants are truly underrepresented because we're only counting those that upload data and not ones who have fun learning in the garden. And the garden is made, the census has made some splashes in other ways. During 2020, when we were undergoing a census, this was a political cartoon talking about how the difficulty of having people participate in the people census. And they used our pollinator censuses as part of their political cartoon. We also caught the eye of our governor of our state. Again, agriculture is very important to the state of Georgia. And last year, he gave us a commendation for the work that we're doing to raise awareness and support pollinator conservation and habitats. And another cool thing that's coming out is a author in the state of Massachusetts has written a book called The Great Pollinator Count based on our census. It will be published in April of 2025, and she will be down in Georgia, and we will be doing a reading, especially to the schools who've been participating, and do some book signings. So just like you all, this project is developed with one kind of goal in mind, and it kind of gets a mind of its own, and it starts expanding in ways that you don't anticipate that it would. All right, so I knew I had to leave plenty of time for questions. So I'm going to stop sharing, and we will be able to take any kind of questions that we have.
Well, thank you for your presentations. We don't have any specific questions in the chat box that have accumulated during your presentation. So we'll just open it up to the floor for those who would like to ask verbal questions. Please go ahead from our audience. One coming through on the chat box, it says, or it's asking from Holly Dodds, what's the chances of Oklahoma can get involved in this great program?
Great question, Holly. And I actually have someone in Kansas who is implementing the program. The resources are there for anybody to take and use. Obviously, you wouldn't be able to connect to the Southeast Pollinator Census, but if you wanted to take the all the things that we've developed and use it and then start an Oklahoma Pollinator Census, you are more than welcome to do that. As I mentioned, in Kansas, they're doing something right now like that, and you're welcome to email me or contact me if you need any help in making that happen. But again, the resources are there. You're welcome to use them.
Thank you. Next question in the chat box from Jamie Liebeck. What have you found to be the best way to get the word out to the public about this program?
Well, we actually, for 2 years, we worked on visiting people. I would visit stakeholders. We have 32 project partners, including things like the Georgia Aquarium, and training agents who were interested in this kind of grab and go program. In Georgia, we have ag agents in pretty much every one of our counties. So they're really got their fingers in the community. That on top of our state gardens, all of our public gardens, and many of our project partners. I'm very fortunate that as things got momentum, it just keeps going. So I'm a regular on a radio program. Our news people pick it up. Actually, WSB, which is the biggest news group in the state, does a pollinator census weather forecast every year for us. So just the first years I had to push really hard. And after that, it just kind of takes on a life of its own.
Very good. Thank you. This is a question for me. It's more of a maybe a science question than it is a program question, but are there particular flowers that that you don't want to plant in a pollinator garden? For instance, chrysanthemums, marigolds tend to have some pest control features containing natural sources of pyrethroids. Do those more biocontrol type plants or pest control type plants, should those be avoided in a pollinator garden?
Well, I'll answer first and then let Brenda grab onto that. Mostly we're concerned about invasives. Excuse me. We have a problem with invasive plants in Georgia, so we want to stay away from them. Other than that, Brenda, you want to take it?
I can speak from personal experience because I have some zinnias planted right next to some mums in my garden at home. And, you know, it may be due to the layering effect that the zinnias are taller than the mums, but the mums have absolutely no impact on, you know, on impeding or preventing pollinators from visiting.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I don't see any additional questions at this moment. Do you have some online resources that come to mind that you could maybe share with us that would provide more information, not only about your program, but about pollinator gardens in general that participants would be interested? And I also see a raised hand from Carmen. Becky has posted the link to answer that question in the chat box. So look at that link in the chat box. And Carmen, go ahead with your question.
Yes, thank you. Great presentation. I have been involved with your program since I was in Georgia. Now I'm here in Alabama, and I think Becky, you are working with Bethany, my coworker, and to start doing here in Alabama. I do have a question and probably emailed you. I'm doing a native milkweed Alabama project where we reach native milkweed in this area, but also this is a really good problem for pollinator gardens. So in a year, I already have 7 pollinator gardens in the area. So moving to my question, would it be possible to kind of do a count for monarch in this pollinator area?
All right,
Carmen, you're kind of breaking up just a little bit. Maybe try and repeat.
Yes. Could be possible to put monarch and maybe the car just as a monarch. Get a count.
I think Carmen, maybe she's asking about monarch butterflies. She keeps breaking up, but if that's the case,
duty troops in such a situation, there needs to be a request from the governor. So,
let's see, Carmen, you want to try one more time?
Ma'am, yes, or maybe I will email you. That sounds better, okay? I will email you, text you.
Yes, and please do email me, and you are correct. In 2025, Alabama will be joining the census as well.
One thing that may help with transmission for those whose signals are not quite as strong as hopeful is maybe turn your video off and leave your audio on as you attempt to ask questions. Thank you, Carmen, for that question. Hoping that we got that answered. Selena Buckner, I can see your hand up. We'll open it up to you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just I talked with Carmen yesterday or 2 days ago, so I can probably ask the question that she's trying to ask. So I guess we were talking about whether it would be possible to have monarch butterflies as like a specific category in like the census to get like, you know, to kind of like pair the pollinator census with also gathering numbers on monarchs specifically.
That's a very good question, and I have been asked that before. We do have, programs that are looking at monarchs already. We have Journey North, we have Monarch Watch, and in Georgia, we have Monarchs Across Georgia. So we did not want to duplicate really what they're doing. We do have people who are counting on Census Day who do a separate, when they see a butterfly, they will put their tally on the pollinator census, and if it's a monarch, then they'll make a special note and then give that information to Journey North.
Okay, thank you for the questions and those answers. Just to recap a little, Becky has posted that link in the chat box as well as her email. So look for that link information in the chat box. Not seeing any other hands currently, and I believe we've answered the questions in the meeting chat. Another call for questions. We'll just open it up to the floor. Well, seeing none, or while you're still thinking on it, I'll just bounce it back to Brenda and Becky and see if you have any final comments that you would like to provide as part of your presentation and the question and answers.
I will say that if you don't tag the link right off the bat that Becky put in the chat box, if you just Google pollinator census, it's the first link that'll pop up. Google even puts it at the top of the list. So.
Oh, very good.
And if you have time or you're interested in creating a similar project, feel free, and I encourage you to look at the website, look at the educators tab, at some of the lesson plans we have. And the website is not static, it's dynamic, it changes as we get through the calendar year. If you're interested in any of the agent resources, just email me. I'm happy to share those. Again, we try and make it as easy as possible for amazing agents like Brenda just to grab it and go and make it unique to their own county and their own needs.
Well, thank you very much. So I guess I'll just ask for a final call for questions or comments. Seeing none at this point, I think we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Again, on behalf of as chairman of the NACAA Natural Resource Committee and Aquaculture Committee, we're very pleased to have help sponsor this today. Very much appreciate Brenda and Becky as our presenters and providing this information on an excellent program. I think as many of us in Extension are aware, pollination and is such a critical part, not only for flowers and in the horticulture aspect, but also in our food production aspect. Having and preserving those pollinators is very much essential part of our food supply. We would like to thank the presenters and thank those of you that are working in this area to help feed us. And on behalf of NACAA, thank you, and we'll end our program and encourage those of you who are on to share this information with your colleagues in a short time. I don't know exactly how long, but a few days to a week. This will be posted. The recording will be posted for those to come back and further review the program. So thank you. This concludes our program today.
Thank you.
Thank you.